Druid. The first character I made in EverQuest, the first class I played in 2nd edition D&D, the ultimate protectors of the Grove. But now they get pretty spicy here in Baldur's Gate 3. In this video today, I want to talk about my Spore Druid melee hybrid build, using all the fun mechanics of the Spore Druid, which wants to be in melee, spiced in with the fun of a combat class that leverages that melee capability. This can go one of two ways, which I'll present in the video, but it'll be based off of the type of melee you want out of the build. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos, so you can decide if it's the right one for you. So with that being said, we'll be focusing on 7 levels into Spore Druid, which will give us the majority of the benefits from the Circle of Spores. The final set of benefits happens at level 10, but we'll instead opt to go for 5 more levels in a melee class of your choosing. Either Monk, which will utilize our High Wisdom, or Fighter to just add more pure melee damage to the build. The decision is really up to you, but both present different exciting ways to approach the class. But that's really the entire breakdown of the video. So if that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down and go recreate The Last of Us in Baldur's Gate. But before you do, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. I currently have 89% unsubscribed viewership on the channel, and that's a metric I'm trying to change this year, so every little bit helps. You can jump ahead to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters about the timeline and the description, and if you need help with any other subject in Baldur's Gate 3, check out my playlist linked below and at the end of the video. But let's get started here on my best Spore Druid melee hybrid build for Baldur's Gate 3. Loading into the character creation screen, you have a lot of different ways you can approach this. The nice thing here is that as far as your race goes, it's entirely up to you. This is always going to be the case because there are no stat benefits of going one race over the other. Now it's worth noting though that you will get certain benefits such as certain cantrips or skill or other proficiencies that you would otherwise have to invest in. So say going with a wood elf here would grant you proficiency in stealth and in perception, which is very nice. Perception is a really good skill. I've just selected a human just for the sake of the video. This is going to give me an extra skill proficiency as well as carrying capacity increased by 1/4. And I really like carrying capacity increase because it's a pain in the ass, but you could just as easily go with a half elf if you wanted. Dwarfs can be kind of fun here, especially if you want to go with kind of something a little unique with a Dwegar Druid, especially something that's kind of also thematic if we're thinking of the Dwegar, which exist in the Underdark and spores and mushrooms and stuff like that. And if you played this game before, you know how on point that is. But the Dwegar have some pretty fun abilities. They get the ability to go invisible. They get the ability to grow. They have a growth spell cantrip that will increase the damage that they do in melee. So this is actually quite fun for them. In addition to that too, they get their resilience, so a saving throw against charm or paralysis, and the innate dwarf one here to give you a advantage on saving throws against poison and a resistance against poison. So this is a really cool, fun thematic pick. Be the same thing here with a drow, also in the Underdark if you want to stick with something like that. They do get also a darkness cantrip, which is very fun to cast blindness around to everything. But please, as always, go with what works for you. Half-orcs are really good in melee because they get a land a crit hit with a melee weapon attack. You deal an extra dice of weapon damage, which is great, and you will be using melee weapons if you go with a fighter. If you go with a monk, it's a bit different. Relentless Endurance, if you reach 0 hit points, you gain 1 hit point instead of becoming down. So you're just a little bit harder to kill. Just kind of go with whatever makes the most sense for you and the druid you have in mind. Now for your starting class here, the 3 classes we're kind of thinking about in a rotation and cycle of this build, this class, whatever, is Druid, Fighter, and Monk. I think, depending on how you want to approach this, if you want to be a Spore Druid that does melee, start as a Druid. If you want to be a melee combatant that has Spore Druid capabilities, start as a Fighter or as a Monk. If you want to be a character that uses heavy armor, start as the Fighter. Now the reason you start as the Fighter rather than the other two is because you start with heavy armor. If you multi-class from a Druid into Fighter, you will not get heavy armor. And I believe Druid starts with medium armor. They do. You would get up to medium armor. So kind of weigh this into consideration when it comes to starting your character. Do you really want to go with the fighter route? Then go with that. Do you really want to be more of a melee combatant? Then go with that. personally, what we're going to do here is we're going to start as a druid. I think it fits overall the scope that I have in mind for the character, and I'm going to go into monk. But again, you can just as easily choose fighter if you want to be more of a actual martial combatant and less of a monk. And this, I think, overall fits the scope of what I have in mind for the character. Cantrips here, resistance is okay. It's a concentration spell. I don't like it very much, but guidance is pretty fun. And shillelagh is fun too because your staff or club becomes magical. It deals 4 to 11 bludgeoning damage and uses your spellcasting ability for attack rolls. So if you're going with the monk, it's worth noting that a monk weapon is any weapon you are proficient in. And if we're going monk, we can take advantage of just using our hands or using a quarterstaff and a shield. So think about those things when it comes to breaking your character down. But shillelagh would really work pretty well with that because it does get pretty out of control. Not really out of control, but it gets stronger as you go up. But we're definitely going to go with guidance, assuming we don't have another character that can cast guidance. But it's nice getting a 1d4 bonus to ability checks. For your background, please, as always, choose the background that makes sense for the roleplay you have in mind for your character. This is a single-player narrative game. Roleplay, have fun, get lost in it, make a bad decision because you're a criminal background and you just can't help it, just scam after meth, I don't know, whatever it is, but have fun with the background selection for your character. Don't feel like you have to min-max this. You know, are you a former acolyte who has converted himself over to the ways of becoming a druid, and that's where your monkish background kind of combines with the druid background you're looking to pursue? Whatever it is, choose the one that makes sense for you. As far as a min-max option, I always kind of go with guild artisan because I like skill proficiencies in both insight and persuasion just out of the way for me, so I don't have to deal with it. And then coming into abilities, let's take a look at our skills here. So we are a human, so we get an extra skill proficiency in this guy. But let's just take a look at the base too. Let me tell you that nature is not the coolest skill to be proficient in this game, unfortunately. Your nature checks are not far and wide, and they are rarely impactful, which kind of sucks. They're kind of fun in the very beginning of the game when you're dealing with the Druid Grove, but outside of that, they kind of fall off quickly. And it's an unfortunate thing because my main character is a Ranger Beastmaster. So I would not put points into nature. And animal handling is only worth it if you're not going to cast Speak with Animals. If you have Speak with Animals, animal handling is useless because you just talk to them. Animal handling is basically like using persuasion for the animals you cannot talk to. So keep those things in mind. But outside of that, you know, perception is a great skill to have. As I've said many times before, you have persuasion unlocked here for you and insight already taken care of, so you don't have to worry about those. The nice thing too is they are wisdom skills, and you'll use these quite a bit in your playthrough of the game. Now, I definitely recommend having one proficiency in a charisma skill if you don't already. So we already have persuasion, so we're good there. And then outside of that, just kind of have some fun. You know, religion checks are pretty common. Arcana can be really fun, especially if you take certain routes throughout the game. Medicine is really only useful for alchemy and maybe one or two other skill checks that I can think of. So not the best one. Survival, pretty good. You deal with a lot of survival things. Just kind of choose from there. So maybe some sort of RP thing. Even if you want to say, hey, you know, fuck that guy, I'm going to go nature. Please do it. Do not think that by choosing nature, you're going to penalize your character. Have fun. Choose what you want. It is your game. You spent your money, so you should enjoy it. So here's just some options I've chosen. Let's go with that. You know, I'll remove intimidation and put religion. Clearly, I can't press a fucking button to save my life. There. Good Lord. There we go. Oh, Lord. All right. So as far as our actual stats go, this is going to be dependent upon if you're going with a fighter or not. But either way, if I chose fighter with this build, I would go with a dexterity fighter, meaning I'm using finesse weapons to try to get the most out of my character rather than spreading myself too thin. We're going to bring our wisdom up to 16, and we're going to bring our dexterity up to, let's just say 14 for now. We're going to increase our constitution to 12. And from there, we make some decisions, right? Are we going to be the main character? You know what? Then I'm probably going to bring this maybe to like 10 or 12. Am I going to go with a monk? In my case, I am. So I'm going to bring that all the way up to 16. And I'm going to use these remaining points, probably just bring that right up there to 14. What this does for me is it enables me to have a good addition to my armor class for my dexterity. It's going to help me as a monk because a monk is going to get an additional bonus to their dexterity across dexterity and wisdom, right? That's how the monk's special ability works. And wisdom is going to help all my druid casting capabilities. My constitution at 14 is going to give me a good amount of health, but mainly what it's going to do is it's going to help me with any constitution checks. Concentration checks are constitution checks, so this helps me out a ton. If you really wanted to say, hey, you know what, dude, I don't want to go with dexterity, I really want to be a strength melee fighter, you could just drop this to 10 and do like something like that, and you'd be good to go. Probably do like a 14 12 14 split. I wouldn't bring my dexterity below 10, and the reason behind that is I don't want a -1 to my initiative. Well, not a -1, sorry. I didn't know. I thought I gave a -1. I'm wrong. Don't watch my videos anymore. But I really wouldn't want my dexterity to drop much further than that, because I would prefer it to be at 12 to get a +1 to my initiative. It's just a nice overall feeling to it. But if it's not your main character, you could play around with the charisma to get some extra points here to push into dexterity. However you really wanted to kind of zhuzh this around to make it make sense for either your main character or for any of the companions you have in mind. And as far as your prepared spells, I would just kind of consider the fact that you are going to be a melee character and go accordingly, right? Like Thunderwave is pretty good. You're going to be in melee. I love Speak with Animals, and it's a ritual spell, so I just cast it all the time. Entangle is actually pretty good, because entangling them, it is a concentration ability though, keep that in mind. They can't move. Attack rolls against it have advantage, while its attack rolls and dexterity saving throws have disadvantage. Ice Knife is a really cool little ranged ability you can use here. For this first level, it's not as crucial for these spells. Even just choosing Longstrider, you get these two out of the way. They're ritual spells that last until a long rest, and you're just kind of good. You cast Longstrider in your entire party, they get +10 feet to their movement, which is actually pretty clutch. Charm Person is also very good here as well, but these are just some pretty good ones to have right out the gate that you can go with, and maybe pushing an Ice Knife if you want a ranged attack ability, whatever makes the most sense for you. But that's how I'd start with our character creation for our Spore Druid. So for progression for this character, I've actually amended my previous thought. I'm going to go directly into Druid level 2, because I just want to get Circle of the Spores unlocked so we can play around with that as we go through the early portions of the game. Into level 2, it'll just be nice to understand how these two abilities work. So you have Halo of Spores, which is a reaction here. Unleash a cloud of necrotic spores upon a target. This uses a reaction, so other reactions won't trigger this turn. Of course, that's how that works. Now, Symbiotic Entity is the other big one. Gain 8 temp hit points and deal an additional 1 to 6 necrotic damage while you have them. Cast Halo Spores with double damage. So basically, you use this, and it would use a wild shape charge, rather than actually going into a wild shape. And this ends if you use wild shape, and it's a temporary hit points, right? So you can only really get this from one source. So don't think you can stack a bunch of temp hit point items. But this will basically allow you to do a little bit of damage here, and your reaction. So again, remember, you're going to use this on a target. And this is nice. It's a 20-foot range, right? So you're going to be up close and personal when you're using this, and it'll allow you to trigger this off as much as you can, and you'll be able to try to, well, you know, when you can, right? You can only use, this uses a reaction, so other reactions won't trigger this turn. So we'll show you how that all kind of comes together in the actual combat portion, because it's a little hard to explain. But Symbiotic Entity, just getting this online early, I think is actually better rather than worse, because you'll understand how it works as you push through the earliest portion of the game and into other stuff. And then again, same thing here for spells. Just kind of choose stuff that's going to make sense, especially too, since you're not going to come back to this for some time. You are a druid, so you can swap these spells out as needed. So if you know, hey, you know what? I'll go Longstrider now because I need it, or I'll go with Speak with Animals now because I need it, or maybe I'll swap one out. Again, whatever kind of makes sense for you. But that's just our level 2. We'll take this and we'll go down to level 3, where we'll choose Monk. This is where we will break off and choose our Monk and stay with from there. So what you can see here is we have unarmored defense. So we'll get, while not wearing armor, you add your wisdom modifier to your armor class. So previously it just used to be your dex modifier gets added to your armor class depending upon the armor you're wearing. So we're getting +3 to our 10 base AC. Now we're getting +3 wisdom to our 10 base AC, so we have 16 total AC. There's a lot of ways you can approach this, right? If I went with a fighter wearing armor, I just don't get that bonus. But instead, I just wear armor to counteract it. The monk adds a lot of really fun playing style that I wanted to leverage. Also, dexterous attack, so we're using our dexterity rather than our strength for all of our attack hits, right? That's why we're jumping so heavily into dexterity. And we have deft strikes, so attack with monk weapons, and unarmed, deal 1 to 4 bludgeoning. Remember, monk weapon is any weapon you are proficient with, and it does not have two-handed weapons, or it's not a two-handed weapon or have the heavy property. So, greatsword would be a two-handed weapon and have the heavy property. So if it's got 2 hands, don't use it pretty much. Now, our last one here is bonus unarmed strike. So after making an attack with a monk weapon or while unarmed, you make another unarmed attack as a bonus action. So you immediately get to weaponize your bonus actions, which is really fun. And it's a pretty cool way to play the game. We're going to accept this here and jump into our 4th level where we get unarmored movement. So as long as we're not wearing armor, we get an extra 10 feet of movement. And we also get our Step of the Wind, disengage, dash, and patient defense. So attack rolls against you have disadvantage, and you have advantage on dexterity saving throws. And then you get this ability to basically use a key point and a bonus action to dash. It's quite nice here, and you get your key points. Key points are it's KI key as opposed to CHI. But you get an additional key point, and this is what you use pretty much as your resource as a monk. Now you think we're character level 4, we would be able to jump into a feat, right? Nope, that is at class level 4. So we'll put another point here into monk, and we'll choose our subclass. Now you can go with whatever you want, but we're going with Way of the Open Hand because we want to be better at being in melee and doing melee damage. You could be a better caster and go Way of the 4 Elements, but that is not this video. And what this gives us is Flurry of Blows, Topple, which can knock things prone, Flurry of Blows, Stagger, and Flurry of Blows, Push. We have a standard Flurry of Blows that we can just use, but we get some capability to push things around the battlefield, which is very, very nice. And this is going to get really crazy once we get to a higher level of Monk, which we'll talk about in a bit here. So once we jump into level 4 Monk, we get some fun stuff. We're going to get Slow Fall, but we now get our feat. So let's have a conversation about feats for this character. So the best feat is going to come down to the approach to this class. You could circumvent everything I've said about dexterity and go with Tavern Brawler and focus on being a character that is a monk using strength to get the Tavern Brawler trait online. And this is a really good one because your strength modifier is added twice to the damage and attack rolls. So if you want to literally punch things through a wall, Tavern Brawler and Monk is going to be for you. We're spicing in Druid at that point just to have some fun with it. So you can see that this does a lot of really fun things to take advantage of, and it's a really cool way to really approach the class that is different than your conventional monk. You cannot use this as a, well, I mean, you can use this as a fighter, but fighter doesn't really have all the benefits of going unarmed like a monk does. Ability improvement score is always nice too as well, right? If you started with 17 dexterity, you could put a point into that to bring this to 18, whatever it is. If I could put 2 points in this just to bring this to 18, however I want, improved ability score is always one of those ones that's safe to go with. Alert is nice just to give you 5 bonus to your initiative. I do like durable because it increases your constitution and you regain full hit points each time you take a short rest, so you're pretty much always topped off. Elemental adept is going to be nice if you want to focus on more of the casting portions of a druid, but unfortunately we can't do anything with necrotic, so I'm going to kind of gloss over this one. Lucky is good though, because you get 3 luck points, which you can use to gain advantage on attack, ability, or saving throws, or to make an enemy reroll their attack rolls. It's always a really, really strong one. But some other fun ones down here are Savage Attacker. When making melee attacks, you roll your damage dice twice and use the highest result, which is very lovely, very strong. Also, Resilient is really good here because you basically increase an ability by 1 and you gain proficiency in that ability's saving throws. So you could do this for Constitution if you had like 16 Constitution and you wanted to push this over, or any one of these other stats that you just want to put what is called a half feat into to also gain proficiency in that respective ability, which is very nice. Martial Adept is not what I wanted to click. Mobile here is what I wanted to click. Your movement speed increases and difficult terrain doesn't slow you down when you dash. If you move after making a melee attack, you don't provoke opportunity attacks from the target. So this gives you a little bit of mobility within the actual what's this thing called? Within actual combat, which is lovely. Warcaster is cool just to give you an advantage on saving throws for concentration and gives you Shocking Grasp. But at that point, I'd probably go with something like Resilient in Constitution because it gives me an advantage on that saving throw. I would skip all the armored portions of this because I'm going with a monk class. But if you went with fighter, definitely take advantage of those. And if you're going with fighter, go with something like Great Weapon Master if you want to stick with two-handed weapons. If you want to go sword and board, go with Shield Master. Just kind of depends upon the fighter you're trying to bring into this, right? Going with Great Weapon Master and Sentinel is a lot of fun, or Polearm Master and Sentinel. Those two combo together very, very well, and you can have a lot of fun with those. So just kind of go with some that kind of make sense for the character you have in mind for this build. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach this, but I think that going with something like Savage Attacker is a pretty easy one just right out the gate, so I'm going to choose that. Let's now see what this looks like in the future. So level 5 Monk is a big jumping point for us. We get extra attacks. You gain the extra attack feature from more than one class. Ignore that. You make an additional free attack after making an unarmed or weapon attack. That is the important thing here. So whenever we use our primary action to do an attack, we get 2 attacks out of it. That is what makes that so important. And now we also get Stunning Strike. Now looking at this, you're probably like, well, dude, what do I care? 1d6 plus 3? Womp womp. Well, Stunning Strike takes into consideration your wisdom is basically its spell casting check, if you want to think of it that way. It's a little bit more convoluted than that, but Stunning Strike unarmed stuns the target, and Stunning Strike melee possibly stuns the target. So you can do whatever one you want if you want to use a weapon. It's a great point. Now you could jump one more level into Monk and do 6 Monk, 6 Druid if you really want. And let me just show you what happens if you do here, because we're going to pivot back into Druid. And that would give you here key-powered strikes. Your unarmed attacks count as magical for the purpose of overcoming enemy resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks. And Manifestation of Body, which keys off of what we're going to be doing with our Spore Druid and already doing tons of necrotic damage. But basically I can decide if I want to do necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage as my just base attack, which is really, really cool. And I get Wholeness of Body, which is a heal. So if I want my monk to be better at being, well, a monk and more into melee combat, I would just do a 6-6 split. But for this video, I'm going to go ahead now and pivot back over to our Druid. And choose whatever spells you want. Let's just say, we'll go with like Sunbeam or something like that, and remove this. Enhance ability is really good. Darkness is, or that's Dark Vision. Whoops. Spike Growth is great. Bark Skin can be very fun if you're in the early portions of the game and you don't have good armor class. This is good, and especially if you're going with not a monk, this can be nice just to kind of jump it up to 16. But let's just kind of move on from there, because our Druid capabilities start to come in here as we push higher. We get a new feat. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna choose. I want something quick. Let's go Alert. I think right now I'll go. Where's that one? No, mobile. I'll just go mobile, just to put something in the video, and we'll get Thorn Whip, whatever. Push ahead into 5, where we start to get some fun stuff. We get our Animate Dead, and we get our Gaseous Form, which are going to be part of our circle spells. And it's level 6 that we really care about here. So I'm going to push ahead one more level. We do get Wild Strike. You make an additional attack after making an unarmed strike while in Wild Shape, but that doesn't matter because Wild Shape is fueling our Spore Druid. Level 6, though, is where we get this. This is where it all comes together. Fungal Infestation. Raise a mildewed, mold-encrusted zombie from a corpse. That is the most important thing of this build because it allows us to, well, summon up the undead. And we get a whole ton more spells, right? And again, we're a Druid. We can just swap these off whenever. It's kind of why I've not put a lot of effort and time into this. But if you want to think of some really good ones here, Call Lightning is always really fun. Protection from Poison is actually a very solid one. Sleet Storm can be nice to knock out any kind of concentration, anything like that. But this is pretty much the top end of our spells. We'll get the 4th level of spell at level 12 once we go up to all the way max to level 7 on Druid. But this character is not that high, so we're going to go ahead and end this portion, and let's talk a little bit more about how we can make this Fungal Infestation work for us. So very similar to our Death Knight build, right? We're going to use this Fungal Infestation, raise a mildewed, mold encrusted zombie from a corpse. So we've got a corpse right here. And there we go. We've got another one right here. And hey, you know what? Got another one right here. What you'll notice is we have these Fungal Infestation charges. Point used to cast Fungal Infestation, raising a zombie from a humanoid or beast once per long rest. And we've got another one right here. Oh, well, I'll go get another corpse, but still, I would be able to use it on another corpse here. This is unfortunately a doppelganger, so I suppose it doesn't work. But either way, we would be able to raise these beasts, and we'd have our own little fungal zombie army. Now, I'm using a very specific item, which gives them Undead Ward. Affected entity is resistant to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. And they have Undead Fortitude here. If the killing blow wasn't a critical hit and wasn't radiating damage, this undead comes back to life with 1 hit point. And you can see it's only got 9 hit points. It's going to pretty much just absorb damage for me. I use these guys, I toss them in, it ties things up, it mucks them around so that I can use my spells, or I can go and just judo chop them right in the throat, whatever it is. It's the strength of using a Spore build, and it's one of the most fun things about this build is really leaning into those capabilities here. Also too, you have the symbiotic entity, which I'll just go ahead and cast on myself so you can see how that works. And that is now just active on me, right? There you go. Affected unit has gained 24 temp hit points because of my level. As long as it has temporary hit points, its melee weapon attacks and unarmed strikes deal an additional 1 to 6 necrotic damage, and it deals double damage with Halo of Spores. So this little guy right here, it's going to be able to do, rather than doing 1d6, it will do double that damage. Now, this will scale, right? If I bring myself up to level 10, this becomes a 1d10. I've chosen not to because I just didn't want to take that route. But you definitely can if you so wish. You could do 10 Druid, 2 Fighter if you wanted, and get Action Surge and everything like that. But that is how the Spore Druid mechanics work and how they're so fun and exciting. Now, as far as gear goes for this character, I've pretty much optimized it to show you the best. As you're playing through, you're going to find a lot of this gear, the uninhibited Kushigo gear, and just wear that. And you find it pretty much right away in Act 1 and in Act 2, right in the very beginning portions of the game. And the nice thing about this build is you're not kind of searching for this armor the whole build. But what's also nice is you can use a lot of the barbarian armor you come across in the game. So like the Blood Gorgers or Gulper's armor, whatever it is that you can buy right there in Emerald Cove, it's a good one to use. So anytime you see barbarian armor, you can use that because it's no armor, right? It's just cloth or clothing, whatever it is considered. But some other ones here. This one I really like though, because the wearer deals additional damage equal to their wisdom modifier with unarmed strikes. So my wisdom, it's already going to just do, on top of the innate bonuses we already have going, plus 3 additional wisdom damage, or I'm sorry, additional damage. Braces of defense gain +2 bonus to armor class as long as you're not wearing armor or holding a shield. Then we also have the Cloak of Protection, which gives us +1 armor class and +1 AC. And we also have one of the most important items here, Circle of Bones. Allied undead within 20 feet are resistant to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. By the time you get this, you'll be coming into the 6th level of your Spore Druid, so this will just come online, and it's going to be nice to use because it's going to give that resistance damage, that half damage to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage for all of your little zombie bros. And you'll have 4 of those little guys chittering about. It's a really, really good helmet. It kind of fits the overall look and theme of the character too. But again, you could be, if you want to jump heavier into the monk side of things, there's so many monk cowls you can use. There's so many barbarian helmets you can use. Just go ahead and use those because it just increases damage when you're unarmored in one way, shape, or form. So just jump into those. Now, the only things I'm going to talk about, Amulet of the Harpers here gives us advantage on wisdom saving throws, which doesn't matter because we have Monk that gives us that advantage, but it gives us Shield here, which is going to help us just get an additional cheap 5 AC out of nowhere. Conversely, you could go with any of the amulets that restore spell slots. There's plenty of other ones too here. Like, I don't know if I have it on this character. No, is it where? Khaled's Gift is nice for +1 wisdom. It might actually be in my bank here. My Traveler's Chest, which is unorganized mess. Oh, here it is. The Sentient Amulet. This is the one I wanted to talk about because it gives us Shatter, which is nice, but also Key Restoration. So using the spiritual energy in the amulet, you restore a number of key points equal to your martial arts dice. So I actually really like this one a lot. I totally forgot about it until I started recording this part of the video. So remember when I said it's optimized? I lied. Now it is. Haha. So there we go. We're going ahead and pop that bad boy on. Rings here. I've got this one on during combat. When the wearer starts their turn with 50% or less, they gain momentum just to kind of move around a little bit quicker for myself. But God, my inventory's a mess. Killer's Sweetheart is the big one. When you kill a creature, your next attack roll will be a critical hit. Once spent, this effect refreshes after a long rest. So it's just a guaranteed crit hit you can get. So you can see now this character, without even going to the armor yet, because that's going to be one of the only other things you can really swap out reliably, is 21. That's pretty sick, right? So we have a nice amount of armor class. We're very tanky as far as that goes. We have 80 health, 24 of that temp hit points in because of our Spore Druid capabilities. Now, as far as our armor goes, we've got two options. The first one is the pure monk route. The Vest of Soul Rejuvenation. Whenever the wearer succeeds on a saving throw against a spell, they regain 1 to 4 hit points, which is nice, but greater Kushigo counter. The wearer can use a reaction to make an unarmed strike against any attacker that misses. So you have to weigh for yourself, do you want to use the Halo of Spores, or do you want to use the Vest of Soul Rejuvenation? Because again, you're only allowed 1 reaction per total combat turn. So you'd use this as you see fit. You know, like, hey, it's nice to have the option. It's not like temp hit points, right? Where you can only get temp hit points from one source. Having multiple reactions means you just choose the reaction you want. So that's what I like about that in this case. So I think it adds a nice layer to the monk. But if you want to be more on the Spore Druid side, you would do this. So this, you can see I put this armor on. My AC dropped from 17 to 21. The monk AC bonus from from wisdom and dexterity is nice, but it's not crucial. You don't need to focus on armored combat. You can use light armor and medium armor if you see fit. I'm showcasing a monk route because I wanted this to feel like more of a monk route for my own personal tastes. But you could just as easily have gone with any of the druid armor you'll get throughout the game. But this one is the most important one, Armor of the Spore Keeper. The wearer gains +1 bonus to spell save DC, and when dealing necrotic damage, they deal an additional 1 necrotic damage. All sources, all of your sources. So if I brought my monk to level 6 and I did that necrotic damage with my punching, I would do 1 more necrotic damage. My Halo of Spores does 1 more necrotic damage, right? And this double, look, where's it? Remember that doubles my Halo of Spores damage, right? So this, you deal an additional 1 to 6. I'm just doing more necrotic damage across the board. But here's the coolest one, Spore Sacs. While imbued with symbiotic entity, you can spread Bibberbang spores. Here, let's hover over that. Bibberbang spores. They deal 3 to 9 poison damage, eject poisonous Bibberbang spores, and create a cloud of noxious fumes for 3 turns. Or T-Mosk spores. You do poison damage again that can befuddle creatures. Affect entity can't control its actions and wanders around without direction. Or haste spores. Now, what is sick about this is it does grant you haste, right? And haste has +2 bonus to AC, advantage on dex saving throws, and its movement speed is doubled. It can make 1 additional action per turn. You don't get fatigue after this like you would if you used a potion of quickness, which is nice. Now, the reason too I'm offering you a choice between Armor of the Spore Keeper and this, it depends upon how you approach the game that you even get access to this. So if you miss it, you miss it, and that's no big deal. You'd miss it in Act 3 in the lower city. That's all I will say. You can just look up how to get it if you want the spoiler. I try to keep these as spoiler free as possible, but that is your alternative depending on how you want to approach this character. Now, for your weapons, I mean, you can use Morning Frost very early in the game. When dealing cold damage, the wielder deals an additional 1. Dealing cold damage with the spell possibly inflicts chill upon the target. I mean, this is a quarterstaff, so you can use this if you want. You'd gain proficiency in it because it's a monk weapon, right? You just have to know, though, you'd have to use, I believe, a shield in order to shut off the both hands thing, right? The monk weapon stuff. But I think right now it still works. But either way, staves do work. There's a staff that in Emerald Grove that actually uses unarmed. Oh, I'm sorry. No. You don't need to use a shield. You can just use the staff as is because it's versatile. But you can use, there's a staff right in the Emerald Grove that gives you a bonus to using Unarmed Strike. So you use your staff and then you get an Unarmed Strike as your bonus action. Even this one is nice because this gives you alleviate the arcane burden of spell casting with the power of the staff. The next spell you cast doesn't cost a spell slot. You're relying on your spell slots, but if you want to, you can use even this one. So you have a lot of staves that you can take advantage of throughout the game, or you just simply throw fisticuffs with your fists and have a good old time. One thing I did want to mention too is there are 2 items that are actually very good. There are gloves and a helmet piece. I did not mention them because they're spoiler heavy. If you've already played through the game, they have to do with Raphael, and that's all I'll say. And if you've played through, you probably know exactly the 2 pieces I'm talking about, but you can go ahead and Google them if you want that spoiler. And I know a lot of people are saying like, hey, you know, the game's been out for this long, spoil away, buddy. That is not my prerogative. This is a narrative-based game. If you spoil something, no one gets to have a chance to encounter that for the first time. So I'm trying to keep that intact for anyone. So jumping into combat for this character, let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can have some fun. So I didn't want to talk about this in the other portions because it's a really weird mechanic. So Halo of Spores, it's a reaction, but it's not a reaction. You use it on your actual turn. You'd go ahead and press Unleash a Cloud of Necrotic, blah, 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 and you click it and you go ahead and do the damage that you want to do here. And I have all my bonus actions that we can do as far as, you know, flurries here that we can push, that we can topple, our Step of the Wind. We've got all this stuff, and it's using marquee points and everything like that. So what we can also do with this is, let me go ahead and take a look here. I was going to say I could do something with some bonus attacks, but I couldn't quite set it up quite well. But reaction here, let's go ahead and see what we can do here. Oh, she saved against it, but that uses our reaction, unfortunately. But we can use that reaction as we see fit and kind of dole out that damage as we need to. And I pressed the wrong button. You can go over here, and let's go ahead and just punch her in the head. And that just goes ahead and kills her, right? She knocks her out. I can then also use my Stunning Strike, unarmed. Keep in mind, too, I still have my bonus attack for my unarmed strike. So I could go over here. Let's do the 80%. Oh man, save the damn stun. You're messing up my video over here, bro. So I can use my unarmed strike for 8 to 18, or we could also jump into our flurry of blows. And we could stagger the target, knock them prone. We could just simply push them. 70%, that's 70%. All right, let's just go ahead and do... Oops, wrong character. That's why I was like, man, that seems funky. 60 there. 60 there. Let's go ahead and go with stagger. And there we go. So we've gone through a turn with this character, and we still have our Zombros that we can take advantage of and kind of send them onto their respective ways. I reloaded the game, and it made them look like normal zombies. They should still look like they're from... Oh, there we go. Here's one normal looking fungal zombie for some reason. Now, had I had an extra action here, I still have a Fungal Infestation charge. It is a reaction, so if I had not used this Halo of Spores, I could have, in this turn, punched her out, used that, and summon her back to life for me to start fighting in this whole entire fight and helping me out even more. So you can see that this class leans into a lot of different directions. I could have used any number of spells here. I could have used Moonbeam to open up, do a lot of damage to these two that are nice and tightly packed, then come in with my bonus actions to do a lot of my flurry of blows. You've got so many ways you can dish out damage, and you've got such cool variance and variability about how you approach this class. You know, I've shown you the monk, but the fighter is a totally viable option here, where I opt for using more light and medium armor and a typical sword and board kind of layout, using any number of the awesome shields in the game that benefit your spellcasting capabilities, while also leaning into you being a upfront personal combatant. So don't feel like you're kind of shoehorned into a monk for this build. Like I said before, you can even approach doing the monk differently. A 6 monk, a 6 druid, a 7 druid, a 5 monk, a 10 druid, 2 fighter. If you really want to like lean heavily into that Spore Druid, and the fighter's only there to give you action surge and a little bit more applicability for different weapons, it's there for you. Or, like I said, 7 Druid, 5 Fighter. You're getting access to all the armor pieces you want to do, all the martial weapons you want to do. You get Action Surge. You're going to get a feat at level 5, and you're going to get, level 4, whoops, and you're going to get extra attack at level 5. So, plenty of ways to approach this. I hope this gives you a lot of ideas on how to play a Spore Druid in your playthrough. I think it's arguably, it might feel like the weaker of the 3 subclasses, but I think it's the one that really spices out to other classes in a really fun way. The Druid of the Land is very much a caster. The Druid of the Moon is a shapeshifter. So anything that you spice the Druid of the Moon into, you're taking away from your shapeshifting capabilities. The Spore Druid, you're circumventing your shapeshifting, and you're using it for all the spore mechanics that can supplement to pretty much any class that you want it to. I could have gone with Ranger here if I wanted, or War Cleric if I wanted. Have fun with this class. Have fun with this build. There's a lot of ways to approach it. Hopefully this gave you plenty of ideas. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one, and take care.